che mo fa sera.
Good morning, and welcome to Talking in Stations. Today we have Season 3, Episode 21, which I'm cheekily titling, A New Day Dawns in Nullsec. I'm your host, Carneros, and I'm joined by two panelists and two guests today. Let's say hello so our podcast listeners can get a sense of your voices. Our panelists today are Matterall of Northern Coalition.
How are you doing, Carneros?
Great, thank you. Good morning. And RonUSMC of Test Alliance. Please ignore.
Morning, Carneros. Good morning, Matterall. How are you guys today?
I was first.
All right. And we are also honored to present two special guests, both members of the current Council of Stellar Management. So we will need to respect their non-disclosure agreements with CCP Games. Keep that in mind. First, we have the Wormhole Ambassador, Counselor ExookiZ of Scary Wormhole People.
Hello.
Okay, that's his hello. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we have Block FC Extraordinaire, Counselor Killah B of Northern Coalition. Say hello.
Hello.
You guys cracked me up. All right, well, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. We're going to start with a little bit of a news segment, like we usually do. And then we're going to move on to our main topic, which, believe it or not, is news and reactions from this past weekend's G Fleet event, and especially the CCP Eve presentation. CCP Cognac got up on stage and dropped a little bit of a bombshell. I know I was shocked. Of course, it was 2:30 in the morning my time, and I'd alarm clocked for the stream. And
you watched it live?
I watched it live, and it took me actually like 2 or 3 seconds after he said what he said before my brain confirmed I'd actually heard what he just said. CCP Falcon was laughing at me later about that. Anyway, but we'll come back to that little tease, and first we'll look at the news items. It's worth knowing that if you're paying attention to NPCs in EVE, the Triglavians have expanded their invasion to now include low-sec as well. So my understanding is they're in three systems or 3 constellations in Highsec, and now 3 in low-sec. None in Null-Sec or Wormhole space yet. Am I right, guys?
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there have been sightings of a new Triglavian construction platform in abyssal dead space. And we've got that link. Captain McLeod, can you put that up by any chance? I believe this is a harbinger of things to come. Do you see the link, bro? I'll put it up as you can. Thank you to whoever took this screenshot for us deep in abyssal dead space. Probably Ashtarothi. We don't know exactly what it means, but more is coming. Welcome to the chaos era, ladies and gentlemen. Not that you haven't been there for months.
Well, the thing is, the first thing I want to think about or get confirmed is, are invasions constellation-wide? I'm not 100% sure they are. I'm checking it right now. I'll let you know.
Good question.
I'm not an expert on these either. I don't think it's the entire constellation. They have a core system, the systems next to it, and sometimes they might be impacting a little beyond that, but it's not exactly by constellation. I think you can have the invasion in more than one constellation if it's actually centered on the edge of one.
Incursions are constellation-wide, but I think invasions are not. But I'm checking.
Yeah, there's a couple of people mentioning it in chat. They don't care about region or constellation. There's a system that the world arc and the core is at, and then it's just two out in every direction.
Very cool.
Yeah, interesting.
There's no real reason why the Triglavians should follow all the same rules that Sancha Kuvakai follows.
I mean, there's no reason they should be following rules at all. But, Sancha goes in and they're like, sorry, guys, we can't invade that system. Different constellation. Got to go over here instead.
They have their structure. Let's see. Another thing that happened this week. When I was working on the patch notes, when I was working on these news items on Friday, I hadn't seen any freighters ganked yet in Highsec since the Tuesday patch where they turned on the 3-minute rule. Let's review the 3-minute rule for a moment. If your ship is bumping on something, bumping on another ship, bumping on an asteroid, that happens, the structure of a station, as long as you put your ship, as long as you request warp to a destination, it will only bump for up to 3 minutes. And after that, software will come into play that automatically puts you into warp anyway. So this makes it trickier for suicide gankers to suicide to hold you in place until their fleet gets to you to gank you in a freighter. Freighters have a lot of structural hit points. They're difficult to kill without a large number of players. So you have to get all those cheap ships next to your freighter and shoot at the same time to kill it. And that gives them some bumping gives them some time to do that. Now they have to take additional steps and more or less suicide scram ships in advance in order to hold you and reset the timer on your 3-minute warp. And it's complicated and expensive, more expensive. And it pulls more Concord to the scene and they can react. And it just changes the dynamics of makes freight moving safer in Highsec.
Freighting?
Not safe, but safer.
Yeah. Because they used to, the pirates used to hold you for, if you were a freighter, would hold you for hours sometimes, right? It was indefinite amount of time. And sometimes you were there being bumped and delayed and kind of kept waiting for your imminent doom for hours.
Well, I've seen 15 or 20 minutes on occasion. I haven't seen hours.
Okay, maybe in his extreme case that was an hour or more.
Once a year-ish, very roughly speaking, there's this player-run event called Burn Jita, and they'll collect a whole bunch of people to go suicide ganking at the same time, and they warn everyone for weeks in advance: don't do freighter stuff in Jita this coming weekend. It's Burn Jita. Some people don't pay any attention.
I wouldn't say they warn everyone. I would say that
Yeah.
They put it out through their news outlets, or I don't actually know how they do it, but they certainly don't warn everybody because a lot of people still undock and get killed.
They try to warn whoever's listening to the meta. They try to warn them, but because they're warning their own people too when they do that. But sometimes the fleet will be out ganking, and two different sets will find a really cool target at the same time. So if you find two freighters that each has a Fortizar in it ready to drop, and you go, we want to get both of these. So they'll say, okay, quick guys, let's get this first one and keep bumping the second one. And the second one will get bumped for 20 minutes while they gank the first one, regroup, wait for their timers to clear, move over to the other one. It's a bad experience for the freighter pilot. Anyway, it's a bad experience for the bumpers. It's a bad experience. But that's moot. We went down a rat hole. Sorry, it's my fault. I don't know I think there have been a few freighter ganks this weekend since then, but it definitely hasn't, it seems lower to me.
The bumping doesn't really affect me as much because I don't, really go to Highsec, but in very large capital operations, sometimes, your fax or whatever can get stuck on the model of a station or something, or if you just undock and you go into warp and you're just kind of endlessly bouncing, then that's I'm very happy about the change just to kind of get that going.
Yeah. Also, speaking of Highsec and JITA, there's been a huge spike in the price of Force Recon ships in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if you've noticed it. But because of their relatively limited, because of their ability to light a standard Sino, a fact that not very many ships have this week, they've become very, very expensive. And I know people who've made a lot of these ships and put them up 500 at a time and had them just go boom, boom, boom right through. Anyway.
Somebody's getting rich.
The price of Force Recons has been cheaper in Delve than in JITA, almost universally through this whole thing, like that.
Do any
more
of you
shopping
guys
there.
know if any of their Force Recon BPOs in existence? It was a question that we were talking about the other day, and I actually don't know. I've never heard of a Force Recon BPO.
I've heard of rapiers, but not. But that's a smaller thing. I haven't specifically ever seen or heard of one. Any of y'all?
A BPO, a Tech 2 BPO for Recon? I don't know. Actually, those BPOs used to be incredibly valuable because they would save you a ton of experimental costs, because you can experiment a T1 BPO into a T2 BPC copy. So you expend it while you use it. But you would have to experiment whenever you wanted to get those BPCs. And a BPO meant you could create an original Tech 2 ship without that cost and have an unlimited supply, because the BPOs never have a limit. And some of those were very lucrative, but they lost a lot of value after the industrial changes of expansion Cryos. So I don't know if it's a big deal anymore to have those. And that is because basically the expense of building was brought way down when Cryos was there. It was kind of a balancing pass. So anyway, it kind of doesn't matter is the answer.
They took some of the magic out of those original BPOs in order to balance the playing field a bit.
Yeah, and when they rebalanced industry, they definitely took out a lot of bottlenecks. And so creating copies, what used to be a hard thing to do, and now it's very easy. It just costs you money, but that money is comparable to the unworthiness of the actual BPO and T2, and that's why it became a wash. You can literally create as many BPCs as you could possibly need now.
Switching for a moment from industry and Highsec over to Nullsec, one of the things that happened with last Tuesday's patch, the same patch that turned off sinusoidal fields and upgraded the wormhole visual effects, which by the way look fantastic. The first wormhole I took, the whole fleet warped to it and sat and looked at it and said, "Wow," and marveled at it for a moment. That was a nice moment. The artist would have been proud. But one of the other things that happened is that my alliance and my coalition and several other coalitions, including some represented on this panel, chose to ask their super capitals to stand down this week from ratting. They're still flying them for PvP and home defense, but they said, supercarriers and Titans, take a week off from ratting. We're going to wait until the situation stabilizes. We're going to ask you to update your fits. We're going to ask you to follow new processes, but just plan on them for now. We'll tell you when you're good to go. Anyone else's group do something like that?
Every group did that. Every freaking group did that. And that is just like, what? They're all talking to one another. They all said take 1 week off. That's weird.
We
That
stopped
is
Titan ratting as well.
That is collusion.
Well,
Collusion.
It's
I
common
think
sense.
It's
we
not common sense.
also
They all
minimize
picked
the
same
area.
amount of time. Like they all picked 1 week. That's a coincidence? No, that is collusion.
Channel called
we
Null
also
first.
reduce- Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ron. Or sorry, Carneros, go ahead.
Oh no. We also reduced the area, and one of the things that Billy wanted was, all right. So, and I was there the very first day of the Sino changes, and my entire and I've seen the defense fleet, and my entire aim was just to avoid an incident. That was it. So basically, just stay docked, right? And we did 2 systems because everyone was out, right? It was like a feeding frenzy of Goku fleets. And we did 2 systems, had no troubles for 2 or 3 hours. And then the next day we moved, we added an additional system, an additional system, an additional system. So we're slowly moving it out and still trying to keep the supers and titans and rorquals a little calmed down. But we also have, several things that we have to have in place for them to mine, besides the hardware, the Titans and everything and recons in place, but also, a plan and an FC and all that kind of good stuff. It's still, even with all of that preparation, it's still extremely difficult to defend.
Killah B, what was your reaction to what was going on? What did your group do?
We didn't do much super adding to begin with. We just focused on Morocco mining recently. I don't think we have a lot of people that rat in supers anymore. And if they do, we certainly pinged out the same like everybody else. We told people to be careful and to maybe, take a break with that for a while. But obviously not everybody does listen to what we tell them. So probably some people are still out there ratting. Now that we moved into fucking... Oh, sorry. God, I really got to stop cussing all the time. Now that we moved into drones, anyways, the stuff's a lot more remote and we don't have that many more people watching us all the time. So I feel like, if you pick some random system and go super out ratting, that is still pretty safe nowadays. So that's
the swearing works great with your fantastic German accent. So
yeah, I know it's a very cliche, but I'm trying to
very efficient
to get better.
I'm just kidding. I think that it's very clear that the groups that do the ratting, and it's not NC or PL that I know of, have put out a statement, and they all said wait for 1 week before you actually take those ships out and get them killed. And what I heard as a phony explanation when I asked people was, and I asked many people, well, that's just, it's not a month and it's not a day, it's a week, and that's just logical. And I thought it's not logical that you guys put a time limit on something because you never did that before. And you all did it, and you all did it with basically the same language. It's just clearly you guys are all colluding inside this null first channel. And that was actually confirmed.
Well, we have been super ratting, though. It's just very small areas. But we have supers out and rorquals and all that stuff out. It's just super, super small area.
We really pushed people toward rorquals. We said, do this and this to your fit. Make sure there's a local tank, not a buffer fit, which for those of you who are newer to EVE means don't use your whole budget on just maximizing your hit points. Instead, use a portion of that budget to self-repair the hit points that you have. That way, we think that if you do that, you'll actually live longer and give the fleet commanders more time to form a rescue fleet to come and save your bacon. And then, that's been highly encouraged. I know of supercarrier ratters who docked up their ship, bought their first rorqual ever, and took it out this week because of that. But I think also we're going to be changing our footprint, just like you said, Ron. Our coalition is run by some very cunning, thoughtful people who plan in layer after layer, and they prepared their approach to the question of where you could rat your supercarrier Titan with an eye towards someday if CCP decides to do resource depletion and we have to move the fleet around, the language is in place and the process is in place to be able to direct them to do that. And they put the foundation in place with this change. It's very subtle. It's great. It's like good UI. No one really appreciates good user interface design. It's like that. Anyway. Shall we move on? The conflict between Legacy and Winter coalitions continues.
We're going to come back to Blackout and talk about like lessons learned kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm asking. That's a question.
Well, there's a little bit more Blackout discussion coming in topic A, as we have on our notes. But lessons learned, I don't know if, we can mix those in as we go. I didn't have a separate section for that. Okay. Well, before we go into the bigger subject of the war continuing, let's back up for a little bit. Snuff burned a spy. They burned a spy this week and killed 2 Goonswarm Titans in Delve. Now, 5 years ago, that would have felt different. But, 2 Titans today seems a little bit light for burning a good spy that had roles. But anyway, the spy actually wasn't even in Goonswarm. It was in TNT. Don't get mad at me, Wibla.
Oh,
and
they're kind of small too. That must have really hurt.
He sorted that out. They're about 3,000 people. It's not that small. 3,000 pilots. Okay. People is a different thing. But
that's a lot of alts. I'm just kidding. It's just that I've only ever run into like 12 guys from TNT. But
they're more EU time zone than US time zone. So what you're usually busy at work or streaming. Just giving you a hard time. But yeah, he did the old fleet warp or squad warp his group to danger to a waiting team of folks from, I don't know, Snuff, Volta, Marshy's friends, Pandemic Horde. There were a couple of test guys in there. Not giving you a hard time, Ron.
Whoa. We need to check the records on this. Hold on.
A couple of NC dot guys. There was a crowd of basically piranhas waiting for them, at a warp spot. And it worked. Anyway.
It reminds me of the same sort of thing happening when, if I remember right, Pandemic Horde, someone burned a spy in Pandemic Horde and warped off NC Titans off of the Keep Star up north, if I remember right, and it was 2. It was right towards the end of the Tribute War when there was a lot of movements and move ops going on, and sort of the same, almost exact thing happened.
Yeah, whenever I see a Ragnarok die on the kill board, I kind of walk in assuming, okay, this was probably a super cap engagement and they targeted Ragnaroks first because those are A, particularly dangerous doomsdays, and B, slightly weaker tanks and probably a good first target in a major super cap engagement. But then when I saw a Leviathan die, I said, okay, now this is different. Leviathans are not near the top of your target list in a big super cap engagement. So why is the second thing a Leviathan? That tells you it's a completely different kind of op. Killah, is that how you would analyze that?
No, I mean, I saw the pings from goons going pretty ham suddenly with logging in all supers and logging in, like forming a subcap fleet, and Tutsi pinged about some flash form, CTA, all hands on deck kind of thing. So I saw the pings and I was like, ooh, it's going down in Delph, something's happening. And then we looked at Z-Kill and we saw a Saber getting killed in 1DQ by a Levy. And we're like, oh, it looks like there was a Snuff Dictor that was killed by a goon Levy. So we were like, oh, it looks like Snuff is strat bombing goons in 1DQ. And then we knew that basically. Yeah, it was one of the public Delph hunting crews. I'm not sure what their name is. Somebody said Delph Pest Control Inc. Obviously, there's a couple of NPSI Delph hunting groups out there, and there's lots of people from different alliances in there. And that was one of those. If you just look at it like net worth, I would agree that a decent spy isn't worth 2 Titans. But at the end of the day, everybody's got to do what gives them fun. And if you feel like you want to do that at that point in time, maybe that person was planning on taking a break from Eve, or who knows, right? And he was like, oh, whatever, I could just get another spy. It's not exactly hard getting spies into any alliance really at this point. Then he thought it was worth it for him, and I feel like that's a good enough reason. But if you just look at it like very objectively, I would agree that a spy is not worth 2 Titans, even if the levy is worth 100 billion ISK, still. Yeah, but it looked like a fun time for the people involved, so I think that's great.
Good points. You know more about espionage than I do, so I credit your valuation.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes people make the mistake of, from a completely strategic standpoint, everybody does the same thing. We do that as well. But at the end of the day, sometimes it just comes down to, you want to have some fun, and then maybe people make some decisions that are not exactly right, quote unquote, objectively, but they still make them just because they want to. And I feel like, maybe not in the middle of a very serious war, but in times like these, I think that's a valid approach to the game. I hate that when FCs, like let's say a serious war is going on and we're trying to defend our space, and then some FC just goes and feeds the Ferox fleet, which is something you don't want to do during a war, because you don't want to boost the enemy's morale. And he goes like, well, I just want to do it fun, bro. It's not that big of a deal. It was only a couple of Feroxes. That is something I do not like to hear. I get really mad about that kind of stuff. But at times where there's no war that we're involved in, or the groups, in a certain engagement are involved in, then whatever. Everybody may as well just have some fun.
My apologies to the honor of Test Alliance. Please ignore. Apparently, none of their bad guys managed to get on those kill mails.
Apology accepted, sir.
Nice. If you're just tuning in and you don't normally talk about spaceships and you don't know all the characters on Talking in Stations, I will point out that we're all from different factions in the game, and we're not allies in any way, and we're all friends and we get along, but we don't represent the same sides. So there's always a little bit of fun like this as a hidden undercurrent in the discussion. It adds a lot of spice.
Why is... Oh, never mind.
Okay. So then let's go back to the conflict between Legacy and Winter Coalition. So this is basically in the galactic southeast and east. And it is it's active every day at different levels, sometimes intensely, sometimes subtly. Sometimes there's a few structures being reinforced here or there, or dropped here or there, or a little entosis, or lone alt doing something. Sometimes there are big battles and timers, and there's a lot going on. This week, there was a twist in the pile where Fraternity or Winter, I'm not sure which one, Ron, help me out on this, declared war on the Army of Mangoes, which those two groups have history going back, some of them to another Eve server, Serenity in China. Ron, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Fraternity in and of itself has a lot of members that have a history with the Serenity server. And they were on the, I would say, like, quote, losing end of the Serenity battle. The quote winners of the Serenity battle, the PIBC, came over here and formed the army of Mango, and they had actually talked to several of the alliances about getting space and getting room to grow. They happened to come to Legacy, and they moved into Omist, and they've been there growing, and as I've said several times, they're unlike any players that you would normally see, because they are old players, very skilled. So they were in Munins in 2 months. Now they have entire fleets full of Munins, and they're very organized and very disciplined, but they're very, very small, right, in comparison. And they're right on the edge with Winterco. Now, there was a deal in place, and I didn't understand all of the points of the deal, but basically it was hands off of each other. Winterco doesn't touch Mango, Mango doesn't touch Winterco. And with that sort of deal in place, there was, we had a deal with them, Legacy had a deal with them that for defensive timers, they would help, and we would help them with defensive timers. That all came to a head on Wednesday, and Winterco declared war on Mango. Now, to me, that's super crazy talk. Interesting, because Mango's very strong in the AU time zone, and now it gave them a free rein to be able to help Legacy offensively. So Wednesday we had a big timer. Mango was there Thursday, Friday, and they're there, and they're there in numbers, right? Strong. So they've now entered the war and sort of changed the dynamic.
But from the Winter Coalition point of view, they had allowed attacks to be staged through their territory, which is what you guys broke. You guys being Legacy Alliance, you broke the non-invasion pact or the non-aggression pact for the same reason when you guys started this war a few months ago. And they're seeing attacks coming from Army of Mango's space. So from their point of view, it looks like there was a violation rather than Winter declaring war. There was a violation of a treaty. Does that jive?
I think that's fair. I think that's fair, because it's also interesting because they can say, hey, hands off of each other. But if Winterco attacks Legacy offensively, then Mango is bound by their agreement to defend, right? And then that's kind of putting them right in the middle as well. And I think it's a fair point, and it's a very kind of a sticky situation, right, diplomatically. And that's, I think, kind of one of the reasons that it came to a head.
Well, what's interesting is that Winter made a big deal of saying, we're not violating the treaty. Test is attacking us. We're the victims here when the war started. So it meant a lot to them to be pictured as the people who were the victims of the war. Like, we're the ones being invaded. But Test was saying, no, they actually played with this gray area by letting Elo Knight attack us from their space. So I wonder, like, now, if that gray area still exists, that they're being attacked from the north. It also works the other way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and we can also say, well, when does that begin, right? Because we could say, well, last year they almost evicted us, right? And this is really still kind of an ongoing, war from last year that we just,
Hey,
we just don't want them as neighbors.
Who got almost evicted last year?
We did. We almost got evicted. It was a very close one.
You Test Alliance?
Yeah.
By who?
You were there. UALX changed it all, but before UALX, we were, it was tight. We didn't, we weren't as sure of victory before UALX as we were after.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, actually, I think that the common knowledge from the Test side of things was when UALX kicked off, it looked like the beginning of the end for them. They were very nervous.
A lot of factions that care whether they're perceived of as having caused it or didn't cause it, or in the right or not in the right. Goonswarm is famous for enjoying sometimes having the villain role in the narrative, but they still really, really care about adherence to treaties, and are they following the letter of the law, and are they in the right here? Their reputation is ironically very important and not important to them at the same time. It's crazy. And a lot of other groups really care if they are perceived of as the aggressor or not, in the right.
I mean, they either care about some things and don't care about others, and there's some kind of commonality to what the criteria is, or they turn it on and off as they need it. Like, there's got to be one of those two things. It'd be interesting to actually analyze that and see when they cared and when they didn't, and see if there's actually a standard there, like a code.
All right. Okay. Anything else about any major things this week that you want to talk about, Ron, in those fights?
Well, it was interesting in that Winterco performed some offensive actions, 3 days. So we had some iHub defenses against them. They tried to put a fort. Some really just amazing battles. I would say that, it's interesting that Imperium proper has now been sending a fleet to assist Legacy with that in those kind of morning crazy time zones. And also, Winterco has been going into Omist now and offensively reinforcing some of Army of Mango's iHub. So it's just heating up. It's been a lot of fun up to now, and I think it's just getting even more activity and attracting more because Snuffed Out, who we had talked about earlier, have now deployed right on the front lines there. So Snuffed Out's now in the battle, and it's attracting everyone.
My suspicion, though, about Snuffed Out is that they're less there for the overall conflict, and they're more there to just pick on individual groups with whom they have a personal vendetta is not the right word. They have like a weird relationship with Federation Uprising. So my understanding is Snuff picked a spot directly adjacent to Federation Uprising and is making their lives difficult as a sort of a small subplot within the overall conflict. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. It's it's kind of funny because it's not just Fed Up now, right? It's now they have Uncle Billy there. And Uncle Billy's been having a great time with it.
Uncle Billy has a ring to it.
It does. I want an Uncle Billy. All right. And then I'm going to use this next little element to also transition us to talk about topic A. And that is, there were a couple rumors on this declaration of war causality between Winter Coalition and the Army of Mangoes that said, oh, maybe it was the Reavers squad from the Imperium that was deployed in Omist and was actually attacking Winter from Omist. And maybe they were the cause of this new war, and it wasn't Army of Mangoes that were doing it, and maybe they let the Reavers work from there. But I will point out that I do have an alt in the Reavers, and they have not gotten anywhere near Omist, at least so far. No, might be tomorrow. That was an interesting twist, but I could say that didn't happen. And nor have we had any contact with the Army of Mangoes. We don't go talk to them, or we don't know any of those guys. But maybe Asher does. I don't.
Well, you guys would all know, I know at least one of the Army of Mango, and that is Fulcrum, the FC from Rooks and Kings back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And he was also on the video. And he is there in the Army Mango. He's really, really a nice guy, FC, very active. And, we expect some tribulation from them in the beginning as they get adjusted to actually being on the front end of this war. But I talked to him. He's very excited. And they're looking to just kind of, continue the war from Serenity over here on Tranquility. And they're excited about it.
All right. But now transitioning over to the news from G Fleet and CCP Cognac up on stage for the keynote. It's sort of a mini keynote, but it was real. He gets up there and he basically shared 2 new features coming to EVE Online, or one new feature and one change coming to EVE Online. And we'll go first to the big one, which is the change. He said, this is an Icelandic sense of humor to me too. With his Icelandic accent, he said, "We laugh at the tourists sometimes who try to use an umbrella when it's raining." Not that that's a good Icelandic accent, but the wind is blowing so hard, it's basically horizontal rain. The umbrella doesn't work. It switches constantly. It goes upside down. Your umbrella lasts 2 minutes, it's gone. He goes, "We have a saying in Iceland, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change." He goes, "On Monday, blackout's going away in Nullsec." And then there's like a pause. Did he just say that? And then they repeated it on stage to make it clear to all the people whose brains just froze like they had a Slurpee. Yeah. So that's why I sort of entitled this episode, "A New Day Dawns in Nullsec." It's actually tomorrow. It's the new day. That has a lot of ramifications. For our Reavers group, who are sneaky, and we're logged off in space somewhere, we've been using the cover of night of the Blackout to be able to log in and do stuff and log out. And you have to be in D-scan range to actually see us and know where we are, or you have to go run locator agents, which are, they're not hard. They're just a little extra effort. You had to go do some work for your intelligence. As of Monday, the cold, hard light of day is going to show, and we're going to show up in local wherever we go. So it will feel different. I'm feeling it. And any thoughts, guys? What was your reaction?
Plenty.
Ron?
Still working through it, actually. But go ahead, somebody else, and then.
Ron, what was your reaction?
I like Blackout as it works for small groups. I like the small nano gangs. And when I say a small group, less than 50, right? You want to get a fleet together of your friends and you're from whatever area and you want to cruise around. I really think that, a fleet of 30 to 40 whatevers should be able to infiltrate and be able to be sneaky. That I like. I don't like 500-man gangs and 100 dreads being able to sneak around. So I really like a lot of aspects of the Blackout, and I like this sort of mystery. But I don't want to hurt the small groups that go around and look for content and try to enjoy themselves. I just don't want that big thing. So I'm happy that Blackout's ending. I wish there was something, or maybe there's some sort of mechanic. A lot of people have had these really great ideas about Sino jammers, also hurt local kind of thing, or hide local, and lots of great ideas. I'm sure they're probably all working through those and that kind of thing. But I'm glad it's over. Hopefully there's going to be something in the future that allows smaller gangs to be able to roam a little bit freer.
I think that I didn't like the Blackout, but not because they turned off local, because there was a half-ass change to a problem that, that there's way more elegant solutions to. Structures come in mind, some other stuff that you could probably figure out, which unfortunately CCP just doesn't have the dev time for. They don't really have the development power to, divert a team to developing something like that because it would probably take a couple of weeks. Probably a couple of months, to be honest. And the Blackout was kind of like, well, we'll just, we don't like that local gives you perfect intros. No, we'll just turn it off or make it delayed like it's in wormholes, and we'll see how that works out. Didn't work out great for them. I feel like at this point, most of the public information on the numbers of the blackout show that the blackout wasn't very effective. The only thing it really did was made bots log off for a while. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't like the idea of local in itself. I think that there should be some sort of infrastructure tied to it. I really like the watchtowers of StarCraft 2. I don't know how many people have played or know StarCraft 2, but there's a Terran, you can build these towers, and they have a radius, they have a circle around them, and whenever something enters the tower's radius, you see a dot on the minimap, which otherwise is, you can't see anything because it's fog of war. And I like that kind of thing, basically, where, alliances would have to build watchtowers. Those watchtowers would be vulnerable for attack, so an attacker could, go there and kill the watchtower, and then the local would be gone. Something like that, I think, would be the way to go. But like I said, I think that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, simply because it would take up too much time to develop. And the blackout was just, like I said, was just half-assed. They tried to just see how would people... What's going to happen if we do it, right? Like, what's going to happen if we just turn off local, because it's the easiest solution that we can do real quick. And then they looked at the data and it looked bad, so they turned it back on. Yeah.
I don't know. If you looked at when they announced it, that it was going away, the overwhelming reaction from chat on the stream was, oh, that sucks. And there was like 3 or 4 people that were cheering when they said it was going to lift. There was some confusion probably.
I think a lot of people don't really understand what the blackout did. Like, a lot of people think that there was a lot more content, especially hunting content, because of the blackout. And that is partially true, especially in the first couple of weeks. The first 2 weeks after the blackout certainly were very active in regards of hunting and everything, because people were excited. People were like, oh man, no local, this is great. I'm going to log in. I'm going to, go out and do all this stuff. But then people got bored again and they stopped doing that kind of stuff. The activity wasn't higher. And in fact, it dropped lower towards the end of the blackout. The activity went lower than it was, prior to the blackout. So it's just not good. Not good at all. Which does support my wish that CCP would change stuff more often, but change it properly, and then, gather data, and if it looks bad, turn it off, instead of, leaving it on for too long. In my opinion, it left the blackout on for too long. The blackout has now done some serious damage.
I think it was not long enough to actually get like...
Oh, they did get plenty of data. Plenty.
Well, they said they got data, so I'll take their word for it. But it seems like it takes longer for people to say, okay, I'm going to stop waiting this out. If I want to play this game, I got to do it a different way. Like that, I don't know if people ever made it to that.
That's not going to happen. Like, that is a fundamentally wrong idea of where if you change something, people will just change. People won't change. People will leave.
So you just give
part of the people will,
even though what they want wrecks the economy?
Part of the people will change. Yes, some people will change, but the majority of people will leave. That is how humans work. Humans hate change. A lot of humans, anyways, not all.
Thank you for telling me how humans work, Killah B, but it seems like it needs more time to see what happens. I don't know what their statistics said, but clearly they looked at it and said, okay, well, we've done what we need to do. We got the data. We're going to turn it off. And it sounds like it's not coming back, because they said this will be a part of history. So it doesn't look like they're going to bring it back either. So maybe you're right. They learned a lesson that they shouldn't turn off the lights completely like that, because it wrecks certain people's gameplay. And then maybe it was too oppressive, which is what I was hearing from a lot of people. But
Were we saying it started July 12th? So
July 12th through
to August 16th.
That's 3 months.
No, September 16th.
Yeah.
It's 2 months.
Yeah, but like I said, there was even a nominate was like, hey, I started playing this thing. I kind of like it, but most people are going, so it's bad, and so it should go. And I'm thinking like, well, wait a minute. You started to actually like what was going on. Do other people know that? Are other people starting to adjust to it and play it instead of playing WoW? Going back to where it was hardcore. Like, that's the ironic thing, is that people are like, I'm taking off to WoW where it's hardcore. I'm leaving.
No, WoW isn't hardcore. Like, whoever says classic WoW is hardcore is also completely wrong, but this is not a show about classic WoW, right? So let's not dive into that. Classic WoW is probably the furthest away from hardcore than anything could be.
But it was bad timing that they turned on this shiny, well-marketed new thing right at a time when people were suddenly upset with their old girlfriend, we'll call it. So that was kind of like a bad, that was an unfortunate timing.
But that's a weird thing. Like everybody that was the kind of stuff that I was hearing throughout TIS was a lot of people who were very vocal about like, oh, this game it totally sucks now because of this blackout thing is stupid, and they had A, B, C, D, E reasons why it was stupid. And I was just thinking, okay, man, let somebody else date your girlfriend. You don't have to call her all these names so nobody else would date her. Somebody else finds value in that. That's how I was looking at it.
I like, the sort of the idea behind it. I agree with Killah in the sense that maybe it was too long. Maybe if they wanted to do some kind of crazy, kind of chaotic changes, maybe they do it Monday through Wednesday or something, just like 1 week a month, or just say, hey, these 3 days, we're going to try these sorts of rule changes or whatever, this kind of craziness. We're going to gather data, and then we'll see. I mean, it's better than 2 months, and like that the blackout combined with the Sino changes. They say that it's making it more difficult or this and that, but it's just adding intricacies right into a process that you already understand, right? So instead of doing A and B and then C, it's like, well, let's add 2 mini steps before A and 2 mini steps before B. It's it's making it more tedious, right? So I'm not sure that kind of equates into what they wanted, but if they wanted to try some goofy kind of little rule things, like maybe a couple of days a month, and these are chaos days, you get higher rewards if you play, and
Well, I don't know exactly what they intended, except they have a couple goals that they put out there, right? There's too much money in the economy. Most of it's being created in Null-Sec, and they want to decrease the amount of Titans that are out there, and those things are getting built all the time because minerals being mined to feed right into that.
They can't decrease it, but they can decrease the amount that is being reproduced or newly entering the game, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, the stockpiles are there, so they won't decrease those, but they don't want the problem to get any further, so they'll stop it cold, and it looks like they did. But what I was thinking is what Minxie was thinking, and that was like it would be neat for the world to be more unpredictable. Like you come to she writes, you come to a gate and the gate is offline for some reason, and so now you can't go that way. Now you got to go a different way. And it seems like a lot of the arguments
that was funny.
That was a great, I like it. Look it up, Minxie on Twitter. She wrote a great message. And also that you have, I think what you have is people saying, no, you got to make it easier to fight so that we fight each other. And I'm thinking, no, that's one way of looking at it. The way I would like to look at it is the world is living and dangerous and full of unpredictability. And I think Blackout started to deliver on that because you saw Snuff get turned around on because they couldn't get help very well. And you saw Ron here, who did an amazing job and bested a legendary FC Elo Knight. And I just loved, as a observer of the game, seeing something I didn't already know the end of. And that was great.
But the Snuff, you mean the Snuff GTG fight or what?
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with the blackout.
Well,
that fight would have happened.
No, they were
the
surprised.
GOTG fleet. No, they weren't. The GOTG fleet had to take multiple gates and were scouted by Snuff when they took those gates. They did not undock and jump into the fight. So that is just simply not true. The blackout had nothing to do with that. The Sino changes would have changed that fight significantly.
Yeah.
But the blackout didn't at all.
Well,
that is a problem with these kind of changes as well, right?
But what about Pando getting dreadnoughts there to help him out?
He didn't.
He didn't. No, he had.
Yeah, but how would the local being there would have helped Pando getting dreads there? The reason Pando didn't have dreads there is because he was told about the fight when the fight started. That's why Pando wasn't set up to do anything, and you can confirm that with him. The reason that Init didn't get there was because Pando and Init didn't know about the fight until it was already happening, or literally 30 seconds prior to the fight starting.
True, but all right. I totally take your point. It's not to do with Blackout, but I honestly think that it definitely lends to not knowing what's going on around you all the time, or knowing what people will do and the unpredictable nature of what it is now. So I thought that was interesting as somebody who's watching the game and seeing what stories develop. Because right now, if something happens, it's very tiring to talk about it because you already know how things are going to end most of the time.
That is true. That I would agree with. Yes, you do know how things end most of the time. Yeah.
And I want to kind of back Matterall up in the sense that the blackout does truly affect intel. And, as you and I, and we all know that if I see, one person in intel, someone was probably going to report that within 3 or 4 jumps, right? But if I see 150 people in local, normally, well, that's a big deal, and that's going to be reported on intel, and people are going to be getting involved. But now, with the blackout, you don't really know that truly until the fighting starts. And, that speeds up the timeline of a response, right? So I would say that blackout affects all those types of things that would not involve a spy, that it's so quick, it's so fast, right? You don't see anything. Someone just sitting there can see 100 people in local appear. They don't necessarily have to hit D-scan and all that kind of stuff. So it does kind of affect, these big fights like that.
See, I would agree that the blackout certainly helped random roaming gangs. When, for example, there was like a 30-40, a couple of times some of our rockets got tackled during the blackout in drones, right? And there was like a 30-40 man roaming gang flying around, and then they left the rocket grid because we jumped a bunch of caps to it, and they were gone, right? And then we had to send out scouts and find the roaming gang. We couldn't just track them and then drop on them or something. So I would certainly agree that it helps with that. But larger fights, you have spies. If I really want to know where a certain goon fleet, test fleet, whatever fleet is, I'll just have a guy join that fleet and tell me. I don't need anyone to actually, I don't actually need a scout to follow them to tell me where the enemy fleet is. And that is the case for most major alliances. So any major content, any major battles, the blackout didn't affect too much. I would certainly agree that, like I said, roaming and some certain small scale benefited by it because they were harder to follow than they were previously. But I also think that the blackout had some negative, clearly for CCP, it was negative. Otherwise, they wouldn't have turned it off. But, while ISK making is a problem, like I said, I do like the idea of not giving people free intel all the time, like what the local does at the moment. But it's just simply a bad solution. That's the whole premise of this chaos era, I think, is flawed in the sense that I do like the idea of having constant change and having relevant change. Just change it, see what happens. If it looks good, leave it. If it doesn't look good, change it. Kind of like with the blackout. But the trick is to not leave it long. And if it turns out to be a bad change, the trick is not to leave it on long enough to do substantial damage to the game. And I feel like with the blackout, they left it on just a little bit too long. Personally, you may disagree. And then also the chaos era would be a great idea if, and this is a completely personal opinion, but it would be great if the CCP actually had some sort of plan on what they want to change. But certainly from my CSM point of view at the moment, it seems like they're just literally, there's a saying, you just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And I don't like to use that, but that is certainly what it feels like at the moment. And I think that's just a terrible way to design a game. Yes, change is good, and I think they should change stuff more often, but the change has to make some sort of sense and not just randomly, we're going to do this now, we're going to do that now. Well, it seems like it's just one guy making those calls, and then,
No, that's what it may look like, but it's not like that. I mean, they said they had some information in January when they switched over to a new chat system, and it broke, and there was no local, and they noticed some behavioral changes, and they said, okay, that's a little data point. We'll think about that in the future. And then I think later on, they're like, okay, let's do a bigger or more expansive version of that. And that's what this was. And it's couched in this whole era of chaos where we're going to mess with the sandbox. We're going to mess with this game manually because we have to do it manually because there's no automation to it. There's no artificial intelligence that can churn the sandbox like it needs to be, because players have solved things and players are getting comfortable in really just amassing power right now. They're using it, but it's almost like good fights where it's like, yeah, they're just the only legit fight that I've seen, contracted out long war is between Test and Winter. There's some bitterness there, but and maybe there's some revenge factor to NC attacking Sort Dragon up there, but
I can agree that manual changes are necessary, and I think that is true. But again, those changes have to make sense. And my concern at the moment is that there is this group of people that comes from the player base that is supposed to give feedback on changes that they have in mind that, we could certainly that group could certainly help out the CCP a lot during the Chaos era, making meaningful decisions, making meaningful changes that could actually help the game. But they're just simply not using that resource at the moment. And they just ran, like, all of the major changes have just been changed without us having any sort of major input on it in the recent couple of weeks, months, or whatever. And that, in my opinion, like the whole Blackout thing, it's kind of cool for us as a CSM because we can then just go and, we could go and say, hey, we told you so. We usually don't do that because it doesn't help our relationship with CCP, obviously. But most of the time, the CSM is right when it comes to these kind of changes and what we predict what will happen. And, it just feels a bit frustrating from my standpoint that they have this pool of people with pretty good knowledge. Like this year's CSM, Willy being on there, me, Aerith. There's a lot of very knowledgeable people, Merc, Goblins. Like there's so many big names there, right? That they could really use. And I don't know, the combined experience of us in terms of like gameplay is so much that I don't know. They're just not using that resource.
There's a few games. There's a few gameplays there, but not many of you are explorers, right?
What do you mean explorers? What is this like?
People who wander around the virtual sandbox, trying to find landmarks, just enjoying space, just living in it.
Yeah, but why do you like? That has nothing to do. Do you think the Blackout helped explorers?
Of course, but it doesn't even occur to you that that's a thing.
No, of course I know that's the thing. I mean, this whole, whatever the guy was called that explored all systems without dying. I mean, that's
there's people who like lore. There's people who like achievements.
I know that, but I don't understand how the Blackout or the Sign changes have any effect on those people at all.
Well, we're talking about gameplay knowledge, and I say, yes, you guys have gameplay knowledge, but it's in the same general vicinity, right? It's big economics, big war. That's what you guys really know really well.
In this case, what they were really being asked is, if we do X to the game, what is going to be the player reaction? And how, and not just what is the quality of the player reaction, but what is the intensity of the player reaction going to be? Because CCP has pretty decent guts sometimes on what the player reaction is going to be, just not to what degree. And the CSM is pretty darn good at giving what the player reaction is going to be. Exooki, you have been quiet for a bit here. What are your thoughts, Mr. CSM rep? We got him on the spot, ladies and gentlemen.
I actually wanted to ask
probably when
that because the rules, Blackout shouldn't have technically affected him, right? But I think that there's been a lot more traffic. I think there's been more people moving in, but obviously, I would never live in a wormhole, so I refer to you, kind sir.
So there's two big different things I think we've seen going on, and it's still early. I think kind of the couple of things we touched on previously was also just that it took a while for people to adapt. We were actually just starting to see people coming into wormhole space from Null and other parts where they wanted to come make their money. Whether or not that'll continue, I really don't know. I mean, because I think, what happens is some people make the risk-reward calculation in their head and decide that if I'm not going to have local and people are going to be sneaking up and killing me all the time, then maybe I should at least go where I can do that, where I'll make way more money. Since if you're willing to take all those risks, you can make a lot more money in wormhole space than you can out in Nullsec. So, I mean, we saw the MER in August, saw wormhole space increase its farming by 2 trillion. It's hard to say if that's I don't want to claim that that's the only thing that Nullsec came and just made 2 trillion-esque in wormholes. It's a little too early to really say that. But we were seeing more people farming that clearly weren't usually from around here. Maybe it's because you could tell because their Naglfars died to the sleepers, or just some of the different fits you saw and corporations that really hadn't been out here much.
By the way, same with incursions and invasions. I believe they started seeing new players show up there. Sorry, carry on.
And then the other thing that we've kind of felt, though, is Blackout dried wormhole space, or not, dried Nullsec up quicker than I think a lot of non-Nullsec people thought it would and were hoping for. I mean, when Blackout was announced, I'd say most of wormhole space was excited. These are things that we've been beating our drum, but be like, we can do it without local, so can you, for years. And the delete local is hardly a new meme on Reddit or Eve in general. But Blackout rolled around, and a couple weeks in, the hunting is different for sure. Depending on where you go, it's worse. Entire regions went from having some activity that we could go catch some merms or some VNIs or some of these to just nothing. Like it has not been uncommon the past couple of weeks that I've jumped on, hopped, opened up Dotland to peek and see if there's anywhere I should go try to catch something, and just see a map of zeros where there's nothing happening. So I mean, I've talked with some of the other wormhole crews that specialize in Nullsec roaming and hunting. I think some of them had given me feedback that it's not necessarily harder in the sense of if there's people there. Blackout certainly makes it easier for me to catch them, but harder in the sense of if I'm just throwing darts at the board of Nullsec regions, a lot more of those darts are landing on a region where there's absolutely nothing. So the effort required to go find my content, I think, actually increased if I'm coming from the perspective of randomly, getting my region that I get to go connect to go roaming.
Good points.
And answering a couple of questions I'm getting from the chat. I think that probably was a demotivator. I mean, I'm not sure if it's a huge change. I mean, Blackout or not Blackout, when I want to go try to find things to shoot at in Nullsec, if I pop open Dotland and I see that there's practically no one there, no one doing anything, I wasn't going to bother with or without local chat. I mean, without locals shifted some of the other things that we do. Like we aren't always as cautious as we move fleets around, since without local, unless I see somebody on a gate, then we've generally assumed that that they hadn't spotted us yet, which usually proved to be the case, since it seems that even 2 months later, most of the ratters haven't quite figured out how to have cloaky eyes watching gates for them. I mean, there's plenty of people that were, but still, from my experience, plenty of people that weren't too. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, with Blackout coming to an end, I'm curious to see if any of that influx of activity that we saw from it stays. Like, I'd love to think some of these people said, you know what, I'll go give wormholes a shot since I don't have local here anyway, discover they like it and stay. But I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of them just flock right back to, what they were doing before with their safe their Rorquals and super and carrier ratting and all those different things.
Well, they aren't coming back to the same world, which is good, because you have Sino changes that might actually affect that. But actually, I don't want to transition there, Carneros, without you, but can we talk about bots and how many bots were smashed?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I think that is the huge deal. That's the most amount of bots wiped out at any time.
Yeah, I know there's some people who think the main reason CCP did the Blackout experiment was actually two things. One is just to do a shocking, dramatic moment thing. And then the second was to target bots and try to do something about bots, which is a noble thing, which obviously I strongly endorse. But did those bots stop, or did those bots just move to Highsec? What I mean,
According to the meta show, they moved to Highsec.
Yeah, well,
take that for what you want to take.
I haven't seen any evidence, though. Is there any evidence they moved to Highsec? Like, I want to see.
They tracked some corps via .land, basically, or Z-kill activity of certain characters. So basically what both said they did was they tracked some known bots, or people that, everybody kind of knew they were bots or whatever. And they looked at their Z-kill, and then instead of appearing on Z-kill and 0-0 systems, you really do know. Yeah. Some people, you just know that they're botting, right? Like, it's not that hard to figure out.
When you they know who the bots are? When you catch a botter out there and you see it and you realize what it is and you report it to CCP, there is always a lag. There's always a lag before CCP does something about it.
I see.
They have a queue of these things. They have limited resources. They go in and do a process. The process is not simple and short. And it takes a while before the butcher's bill catches up with the guy doing the botting. So at any given point in time, there are known botters in space that people have encountered and reported, and just they're still there.
Oh, I thought they were saying they knew the bots, which ones they were. And I thought, well, do something.
I mean, for the reduction in botting, I can just say that there are regions of space that we saw the ADMs and the activity defense multipliers, which refers to how much is ratted or mined in a particular system. And the more you use a system, the easier it is to defend, right? And we saw ADMs drop like a rock across large areas. I'm not saying that that's botting. I'm just saying that.
Too, wouldn't it?
What's that?
Wouldn't that happen with people too if they're not out there mining and doing all that stuff?
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's the interesting part, right? Because you could also say that maybe some of that is attributed to Blackout. So, I don't know if they're bots or not, but I can just say that, huge areas, the ADMs just dropped significantly. And, some of those people moved on and some of those didn't. And yeah.
But the Highsec thing, I just, besides anecdotal information or statistics, I don't know, it's not public, but it's just from Boat and whoever else saying that they tracked botters that they were familiar with and they all went to Highsec to do some, like, I haven't seen any evidence of that. It's a nice theory, but losing how many, 6,000 or 4,000 4,000 accounts were banned. What was the number? It's like 4,600, I think, 4,200
in the last MSR monthly security report. Yeah, I don't remember the number. I do remember that there was an increase in the number of orcas that died in Highsec, and I would say that is partially ascribable to Triglavians, and I believe, and then I think that's also in large part ascribable to bot behavior. I think a lot of bots shifted over from let's do X in Nullsec to let's do Y with orcas in Highsec. For those of you who don't fly mining ships very often, the king of mining ships, the Rorqual, cannot enter high security space. So that's not an option for use there. But the prince, or the poor cousin of the king would be the orca, and they'll use him instead.
Well, but also, again, those can be players. We know that Bard Ghost has multi-boxing. Somebody hangs around TIS.
Not very well, he isn't.
Did he get killed?
Just teasing you, Bard Ghost.
Did he get killed? Yeah. All right. So he shows up on kill mails too. But the people are doing that to get that what we call idle gaming in, which is where you can relax and do multiple things at the same time, and you're still accruing money but it's less. It's a lot less than if you were doing super ratting or Oracle mining in Nullsec. But by the way, that number is 4,300 bots, and that is, I think, the single largest month for destruction of bots. So what happened, I think, is they essentially lift up a rock, and all these bots go running around, and they can tell that these things are not players, and they just wiped them out. So it was Blackout helped with that, and so did some of the aftermath of. There was a couple of reasons given in the security report, yeah, but that is. I think people generally don't like bots because they feel like it's an unfair advantage for a certain group, and so that the players that are doing that are basically cheating because they can make money all day long while they're away from the computer, and then they can multiply it by many, many different accounts.
And it's distorting the economy and reducing your economic opportunities, and it's doing a number of things.
Yeah, and that's totally unfair for pilots that sit there and have 4 or 5 oracles or 2 or 3 nixes while they're ratting. That's an unfair advantage to be able to automate that, as opposed to just multi-box it, as opposed to just do it yourself.
All right, let's switch topics a little bit now. One of the other things that apparently CCP Cognac mentioned up on stage, I was in so much shock from the bomb that I didn't hear this part myself, but they told me afterwards, was shared bookmarks. Let's talk about bookmarks for a moment. This is a deeper, more substantial subject than you might guess at first. Players, there's 2 ways you can save a bookmark today. You can save it for yourself, or you can save it for your corporation if you have roles in your corporation to do so. Players have been asking for that to be increased for years. There's a limit, there are many limits on bookmarks, how many you can copy at a given moment, how many you can save, how many you can save at the corporation level. They've been wanting alliance bookmarks. They've probably asked for alliance bookmarks since about an hour after alliances were invented. But certainly since before I started playing this game. But they've in this case, instead of just delivering what players asked for, which is alliance bookmarks, they've actually thought about it and offered a little bit more with this shared bookmarks things. My understanding, and correct me guys, is it's something like access lists, ACLs, and you'll be able to share the bookmarks with groups of people that you craft in the same way you craft an access list. Can someone speak to this intelligently instead of me?
Well, I mean, I can talk a little bit about the value of bookmarks. So, bookmarks are really interesting because there are some things that happen in game that you have to use a bookmark for. And when you are ratting and you get an escalation, that escalation appears in the agency, but it's only known as a bookmark. So you get the escalation, and then you have to go to the actual escalation and bookmark it. And then you take that bookmark out of the bookmark manager and you drag it as an inventory item. And then you sell that inventory item to other players with a time limit, right? So if you get an escalation, it's 24 hours, and that thing will exist out in space for 24 hours, and you sell just the bookmark. And when the player accepts that, they have to go to that station, grab that inventory item, and then go to the bookmark, and then they can do the escalation. So what's interesting is just in the escalation kind of gameplay, being able to set an expiration time, right, of 24 hours, that's interesting. And then just being able to directly share the bookmark. That's also interesting. The other kind of thing that people use bookmarks for are they sell bookmark packs. And when you sell a bookmark pack, it was actually one of the kind of really nuanced ways of new bros being able to make ISK, when we would move into a particular system or a region or an area, is because bookmarks are very handy, off of gates. So someone would go 200 off of a gate, 400 off of a gate, 600 off of a gate, make those bookmarks, and then take those bookmarks, make inventory items, then take all of those and sell those as a bookmark pack, right? And it was always kind of a neat way of you going into an area, being able to buy a bookmark pack from a new bro who had taken the time to set up all of these bookmarks, and then you not having to do it, and you pay 150 million or whatever for their time, but then they could just do it. And being able to share
Those are cheap
is just really
bookmark packs.
interesting. Yeah.
I've paid hundreds of millions for bookmark packs from a guy in Gentleman's Agreement who used to supply me with some really, really sweet ones. Wow. I like your economy. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Oh yeah, no, it's just really interesting that you'll be able to disseminate that kind of info, which you can only get by going to X and Y and Z in space, immediately to the alliance, to the corporation, and to other people, right? Like an ACL list. I think that'll be super cool.
How would shared bookmarks, or the ability to quickly share a bookmark with random people, how would that affect NPSI fleets, meaning not purple shoot it, which means like groups of people coming together in public who don't know each other, but choose to get in a fleet together and go off and hit targets together? It's sort of like if you play other MMOs, like a pickup group. How would an NPSI fleet be affected by this new shared bookmark ability?
Well, your scouts could go up in front, 2 or 3 jumps, and create bookmarks pre-made for you, rather than the current the current mechanic is you burn to a ping and wait, and then the FC warps to you. But what they could do is make 2 or 3 bookmarks all around and then share those with the FC, and then the FC can just pick amongst them, rather than actually having a ship out there at a particular spot that could be probed down, and then you could just wait like a cat, and then when the fleet warps there, then you can jump on them. So I think it's a really neat mechanic, I think, and people and players will find new and inventive ways to be able to share and trick each other and that kind of thing.
Well, I've heard through the grapevine that the NPSI fleets don't like this shared bookmarks thing, and I was hoping someone could dig into it a little bit more deeply. Are there other groups that are going to be hurt by this? Is it going to have any impact on Wormhole life at all, Exooki? Probably no. I mean, you guys use Wormhole. You use bookmarks to communicate where your wormholes are. And McLeod pointed out in a little chat with me that if they auto expire after a certain time, that would be a nice feature for Wormhole. You can clear them out without having to go in and manually clear out your shared bookmarks, right?
Yep. I think these will be big for Wormhole space. Like just the fact that we can now have our bookmarks shared with someone that's not in our corporation might, which is one of the reasons you don't really see many Wormhole alliances. I don't want to jump. I don't know for a fact that it's going to make a huge difference, but it at least removes that bar. Like every so often, you see people that are like, can our corporation join your alliance? And they want, and people talk, and it's like, well, right now, like we'd love to just do that because it's way easier for some things and some reasons, but trying to share bookmarks between more than one corporation is an immense pain. And so the ability to just say all of our bookmarks are ours, they're yours too, that'll be great. It's not uncommon that we have a fleet going and the scout that has the bookmarks isn't in corp, either because intentionally they're in, they're out of corp alts to avoid as much recognition, or just they're a corp in our own alliance, but they're not in my corp. So like a lot of every so often, one of our guys in their farm corp will have a beat on something, and either we have to rescan the whole chain, or they have to come physically drop us the bookmarks or contract them. So being able to just click 2 buttons and share this whole folder for this one operation with as many people as it need to, I think will be big. And the ability to do that it's a folder now. It's not just TD Sins bookmarks. This is a group's different folders, all stuff that I think could definitely shake things up and make life easier for some people at least.
All right.
The interesting thing about this, and actually it ties into Blackout as well. There's and this is not my point. This is a point brought up by Caleb, who thinks about things too, that the technology has come a long way for the underpinnings of EVE Online. And that was even discussed by Hilmar. And so 2 of the things they have discussed forever was no local in Nullsec, which we just saw. And another one was Alliance bookmarks, which was too tricky to actually program, I guess the way Python works or something. And so maybe what we're seeing is evidence of things that we wanted a long time ago that are now possible because of the maintenance work that's been done over the last 5 years on EVE Online, and that it's becoming easier to extend. It's being easier to use to just make stuff that wasn't possible before, because the code is properly positioned to be able to be extended upon. Whereas before, it seems like there weren't even really coders making EVE Online that were planning for the future. Hilmar said that the game was going to last 5 years maybe, and they'd go on to the next thing. So it really seems like a lot of the maintenance work is now allowing things to happen that couldn't happen before.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll just point out that the shared bookmarks thing has side effects for various groups, and we'll probably hear more about those in the future, particularly if it goes live and those people start running into complications because of them. It's the people who get impacted negatively that will talk more about it than all the people who enjoy the convenience of it. Then the negative messages always come to the top. Welcome to human nature. But let's go on from that. There's another new thing, a third new thing that CCP Cognac set up on stage. And now this one's a little bit less functional and a lot more romantic, in my opinion. This is the Eternal Sino monuments. These are a special set of monuments designed that players can build and deploy in the future. They're not available yet. And they're for use to remember those who have passed on in real life. Who can talk to this one for a moment? Matterall, have you been paying attention to it, and it can talk about the Sino graveyard and all that?
Yeah, this is not something I'm traditionally familiar with, because I tend not to want to get involved in real people's lives. But players, and this is very sad, I've experienced it myself, and many have, players pass away, and it's very sad to see that your friend is no longer there on the other side of the avatar or ship in this case. And one of the things that people do as a tradition is this goes for all MMOs, is they try to mark the passing of a loved one, and they also have a remembrance. And they do that with different things. In different games, it'll be different things. In EVE Online, there is a cynosural field that people light, and it's kind of like a lighter in the sky, basically. And so what they've done is they've merged that with something that players had built in the past, which was a cemetery. And the cemetery was basically a player-owned station, which is a tower. And the tower is surrounded by cans that people eject, and they labeled the can their friend's name or some message. It's like a message on a wall to people. And so that has a physical location in the game and has been there a long time. So they need to remove player-owned stations from the game in order to eliminate that code base so that they can make the game more extensible, as I was saying. But while they do that, they don't want to lose this great, very organically built monument of respect to players who have passed on from their friends. And so what they've done is they've gone to the art team and said, let's build something that's permanent. And so what they're going to do is take this new sculpture that they've built. It's very beautiful. You saw it earlier. And they're going to replace the tower with that structure. And they're going to leave all the cans that were there before so that all the messages that people left will still be there. But the tower will be gone, and you have this beautiful structure instead. And you have what is in the middle there, a source of light, which represents the cyno-shoral beacon that people use. And every once in a while, you'll see
every 6 hours, I think they said.
Was it 6 hours? Every 6 hours, if you make a pilgrimage to it and are there, you'll see a burst of light. You'll see light up this. I think the pod. It kind of goes into the pod and then it bursts into the sky. You'll see it here in just a second, and that's a message that is really beautiful. It's that these players have gone on to the greater heaven, and that's what that represents. So this is something that was in the works for a while. I think it was over a year, and they're rolling it out, but they're going to do it carefully with a high degree of quality instead of just getting it out there. So what that means is it's not quite ready yet.
Okay, I misunderstood because I thought they were going to release some kind of blueprints that we could build these things ourselves. But no, it sounds like they're just going to use one and put it in that spot where the tower was or something.
That's exactly what they're doing. This is going in, I believe it's Molia.
Molia is the system?
I believe that's where the most famous player cemetery is.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is getting placed by CCP as like a memorial structure, and I think there will only be one.
Well, we've done shows in the past, look, we meaning you, Matterall, where you took a group on a tour of important locations in New Eden and showed them the sites. You'll have to, and I know you've brought people to that cemetery before, but now you'll have something even more impressive to take people to.
Yeah,
you'll
actually,
have to do one of those shows again someday.
Yeah, those would be nice to do and actually time it so that we could see the pulse of light going to the heavens. Yeah, those shows were basically real tours inside of EVE Online. I would stream it, of course, so more people could participate. And we would go to different battle sites, and we would get to the place that we were going and talk. And on the way, we would talk about the importance of it. And then I would sightsee around if there was anything to see. Sometimes mostly we did battle sites, but sometimes we went to trade hubs and talked about their trade hub history and how they were important at one time and how they've come and gone. And then we also did the cemetery, and we also did the other landmarks or space marks that are in EVE Online to kind of show there's a diversity and a geography to New Eden where it takes place. Yeah, we should probably do that kind of thing again. X up if you would want to go on a tour. Get an idea.
He's counting Twitch chat to see.
Let me know. Let me know.
Those of you listening to the show who can't X up in your car or whatever.
Well, probably it would be good to get proper FCs to do it, right? To keep you alive while you do it, because some of these places are pretty dangerous. I got killed one time. I got trapped in. I was doing the Fountain War, and I got trapped trying to get to the 6VD at the very end. At least it was at the end of the show, but I got blown up. But it's totally fine.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot of X's in chat.
Nice. So did we learn anything from Blackout now that it's ending? Are there any lessons to be learned? One is that human beings don't like change. Two is that EVE Online players react more intensely to change than CCP sometimes think they will react. Any other lessons to be learned?
That I won't rat if there isn't local.
Ron. Okay. All right. Like a TMZ Hollywood tour. That is hysterical. Thank you, Alex.
I can think of no one better than Ron doing these tours, by the way.
Oh, he's got a great voice for it.
He's the guy you want to hang out with, right?
They said that me and Pando co-FC, but that would probably last 2 jumps, and then we would end up in a brawl, and then it would just all, go into chaos, and everybody would be having to dock up. It'd be crazy.
That would be hilarious.
I think, the overall lesson, that we learn from Blackout is that you can't assume that people will play the same if you change the rules on them and expect more danger or more this or more that. I think it adds more intricacy to things, and people kind of group up together. There's safety in numbers, and that Nullsec in particular will just respond to different rule changes. And you get rid of local, okay, well, we're going to pull back 8 systems, and we're going to group, and we're just going to huddle together like around the campfire kind of thing, and we're going to be more diligent about this or that. And the net effect of that is just being less productive in game and more focused on the mechanics and the safety of it. So you can't, I guess, enjoy yourself as much, maybe, would be a thing. You'd have to spend more time on the administration than you can on just the enjoyment of it.
All right. Okay, I think we've finished our agenda for today. Thank y'all for coming. There's a thing we do at the end of the show. This is something you might not know. So those participants who want to, prepare something in your mind, and we're going to share it with the crowd here, something you might not know about EVE Online. And that's sort of our, in lieu of shout outs, that's how we like to close the show this season. And we'll just do this one around the room once. You can say pass.
Oh, I'll go last.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll just go first for fun here. Mine's going to be obvious to some people, but not to others. And that is, if you are the sinosaural fields changed this week. Okay, you know that. Last Tuesday they changed. Now there's 3 kinds of sinos: standard sinos, industrial sinos, covert sinos. If you are a Black Ops battleship bridging covert ships in to do a hot drop or a covert movement somewhere, you can bridge people to a covert sino. And everyone knew that. And most people also knew you could bridge people to a regular sino. That would work too. You can also bridge people to an industrial sino. So if you've got people who, and you can put an industrial sino on an industrial ship, like a cheap Tech 1 hauler. So one of the things you could do is dress up a Tech 1 hauler to look innocent. Hi, I'm just collecting PI materials from a moon over here. I'm harmless. And then you get up next to something and you light your industrial sino, and the Black Ops ships can bridge in on top of you. I don't know if you knew that. So you can use all three of those for Black Ops. All sinos work, and beacons. Who else has something?
I can go. It's not super, mysterious, but an interesting way to use the fleet formation. I call it slingshotting, or whatever you want to call it. But you can have one character that is cloaked up with probes and probe down an enemy fleet, and then have him as like a squad commander or a wing commander, and then one or two or three, let's say, sabers underneath that person. And as you probe down the enemy monitor, then you can fleet warp those under you to that monitor, but then you can personally cancel the warp. So you're basically just shooting sabers at the enemy monitor, and they'll warp at 0 or close to it, depending on how fast they're going, and just keep going, right, and just keep throwing ships at the enemy fleet. So it's not super secret, but it's an interesting use of the mechanics, in the sense that you can just keep mysteriously warping people right on top of the enemy fleet.
Killah, Exooki, do either of you have one?
I do. I'll drop some secrets. So, what it was? This is not that you might not know. Wormhole space drifters persist after they're spawned. You can spawn them in high class C5 and C6 and they will persist theoretically indefinitely, and they warp around, and they effectively now live in that system until someone kills them. What a lot of people don't know about them is these drifters they only warp to planets. Occasionally they warp into anomalies, and they can warp to wormholes. What people probably don't know is that they are actually capable of warping to wormholes that have not spawned yet. And so you are capable of, via combat probes, finding your drifters on a wormhole that does not have a cosmic signature and otherwise could not have been found at all. And thus you can actually jump through a wormhole that shouldn't exist and catch people on the other side who have not yet opened their step.
That's crazy.
That is so tricky.
It's not a bug. I reported this. It's not a bug. CCP is not fixing it. For all the people yelling bug reports.
You guys have it too good. You guys, I don't know how you uncover this stuff.
Wow.
You know what that reminds me of? Like crab
when I first bug reported it, the GM actually informed me that I was only that they were watching this to determine if they needed to fix it. And when this at least had been reported, the amount of people that had been able to take advantage of this was in the single digit.
Oh, okay.
This is one of those like super niche things because of how rare the series all has to happen. I have to have drifters in my system. There has to be a wormhole opened up into my system that has not yet actually run its course to the point where the signature will show up, and my drifter has to decide to warp there. If these three things line up, then you're capable of committing some shenanigans.
There's a certain satisfaction in talking to a GM and having them say to you, we've been watching this specific thing, and you're one of only a handful of people to ever catch this. That's a
badge of honor.
That's like a dopamine hit, among other things. Yeah. Nice.
And don't they still give away awards or Plex or something for that?
For what?
For reporting bugs. Wasn't there like a bounty system or something if you found something?
I think they used to, but they've, I believe, retired that program. They also used to give you Plex when you reported bots that actually got banned, but they did away with that a long time ago as well.
they do have a large collection of Plex off of banned accounts that they could pay out with if they wanted to.
Nick in chat had just a great idea. Instead of Plex, for people like us, what if they gave you a particular skin that you could only get for reporting a bug? That is cool.
Yeah, that
I
looks
like that kind of thing.
Old-timey prisoner clothes, striped.
I love it. I love it.
Killah B had to take off. Fight started kicking off, so he has to go FC.
Oh, never mind.
Oops.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm back. My the fight thing seems to be covered by Horde, so we're good.
Do you have any pithy words of wisdom and knowledge that you could share with our audience tonight? What's something they might not know about Eve?
This game has been through a lot of ups and downs in the past, and while I do agree that at the moment it's looking a bit worse than it has, and at least in my time, I still think that there's ways to come back. And I think even people like me, when I get really grumpy about Eve, at the moment I'm pretty grumpy about Eve and about CCP and everything, but I did not pour so many hours into this game. At this point, I've been playing since 2009, when API still worked, and I checked my logged in hours on Killah. It was 22,000, which at the time was about 10% of my life. I love this game. I just wanted to succeed, and at some point, I think it's possible. You just have to find the right way. CCP has. At this point, it's really out of our hands, I think. It's completely a CCP thing right now. They have to fix their internal structure as a company and then make the game great. I'm hoping that's going to happen.
Okay. So at the end here, I'll suggest something that's interesting. I look for parallels between real life and in the game. Sometimes look into Eve history for cycles of repetition, what people have done in the past and how it repeats itself. So one thing I want to point to that you might not know is when Eve started, it drew from other games, just like other games draw from Eve. So when Eve started, some of the games that the most veteran players came from was like Home Earth or Homeworld. Homeworld was one game where people said, hey, we're competing on this landscape, but let's move over to this bigger game that's virtual. It's an MMO called Eve Online. Let's go check that out. That's where groups like Evolution and DICE and Xanadu, not DICE, but Xanadu came from.
They didn't come from Earth and Beyond?
Oh, I'm sorry. They came from Homeworld and Earth and Beyond. And that was the other one. Earth and Beyond was another one that was like Homeworld. And those people came from there. You know what? You may be right. I think Evolution came from Earth and Beyond. No, I thought it was Homeworld. I don't know. One of those two games. And the group before DICE was Arcane Technology. And they came from... I think they came from Earth and Beyond. And these were big multiplayer games, but they weren't MMOs. And unfortunately, unfortunately for EVE Online, they benefited with a burst with a lot of players that were interested in this kind of gameplay. And right from the beginning. So it was a benefit to EVE Online. So when you see people taking off for WoW Classic to do their nostalgia thing or to do stuff they couldn't do before, or to play with friends that weren't there before. That's happened before. It happened in 2011 with Skyrim. These giant open world single player games are so beautiful and big that they fulfill that getting lost in the world feeling that you're looking for. And also other games like, what is it, Star Galaxy 2 or something that is more on the Rails version of EVE Online. I don't think many people are going to that. I think they kind of look at it and think of what a limited version of EVE Online. But the point is that games will constantly swap people back and forth. It's benefited EVE Online in the past, and it's happened to their detriment as well. So we'll check that out.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, that will bring our show this week to a close. Thank you for joining us today for another conversation about spaceships. Please join us Wednesday night / Thursday morning at 0100 UTC for our midweek edition. And also, please keep an eye open for any pings about special coverage when the CSM 14 Summit minutes get released. We're going to do a special show with a special guest actually that day, CCP Dopamine. We'll announce that date and time when we know when the minutes are going to be released. Big thanks to our supporters on Patreon and Twitch TV who helped make this happen. Thank you all very much. Fly safe.